Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mind Controllers, a podcast about shining the light on the psychological aspects behind some of our favorite video games. I'm your host, Joe Moreno, joined by my co-host,
Brandon Craw.
And today we'll be talking about the characters of Deadspace Remake. So, real quick, little history on Deadspace, how I played it. I played it back on PS3, when it came out. I did a new game plus, tried to do a new game plus with just the flamethrower, right? Because I heard it was a terrible weapon. I had a lot of fun with it, right? Yeah. It was a good game. I'm not really big into horror games. I just don't like seeing like the characters get dismembered and destroyed. And
dang, so how was this game pretty rough for you then? I feel like that happens all the time.
Yeah. So the way I played this game, especially back then, was like watching a walkthrough and then doing it with playing the game with the walkthrough, so I know what was happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were afraid of like something terrifying you, something scary, like just happening that you didn't expect?
Yeah. So I made sure I knew what to expect, right? So yeah, I mean, kind of cheated it, right? Cheated the system.
Yeah, that's okay.
But the new game plus was on my own terms. Whenever I went back to it, I took some time off, went back to it. I was like, okay, let's play it just how you would naturally play a horror game. But what about you?
Yeah, for me, I remember when these games first came out. So we're talking about the remake, but they're a remake of an original game that came out. When was it? 2008. And I remember everyone talking about it, and I really wanted to play it, but I think, let's see, I would have been like 16 when this game came out. I was still in high school. I did not have my own money. So I felt like my parents bought me like maybe 2 games a year, and I didn't really want to ask for this one.
It was not going to be in the wish list, right?
Yeah. I felt like even so, it's still true now. I still love RPGs, so it was always waiting for an RPG. But yeah. So the first time I played this game was when it came out. The remake came out last year, and it was last year, right? 2023.
I think so. It was in January.
Beginning. Yeah.
I remember because it came out. I think it was $70, right?
Yeah. Oh, right. It was like one of the first games that had the $70 mark. This was the first time I played this one or played this series. I haven't gone back and played the other ones. I don't know what happens in 2 or 3, but I love this game because it feels like, for me, and I'm going to dive more into this about like the psychology of horror video games, but it feels like it takes a lot for me to like get scared in general. From media, real life is a completely different story.
Right.
So I really enjoyed this. I felt like this game did a good job at making me feel uneasy and like nervous and anxious, like going through some of these hallways and like trying to progress the game. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil like what happens or what we're going to talk about later. But yeah, I just really liked it. So
it's a good game.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and give us a little rundown about the game real quick. And, just got to put our disclaimer at the top here. We're going to be talking about Dead Space Remake and any other spin-off games. Well, not spin-offs, but any other sequel game.
Dead Space knowledge?
Yeah. There's... It'll be some Dead Space knowledge, ancestral Dead Space knowledge that we've pulled from wikis. So we want to put a spoiler warning right here. If you haven't played Dead Space yet and
there's a lot of lore.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot.
I was realizing that as I was looking through it that I just did not. I'm assuming comes in the later games or something. I didn't pick up on a lot of that lore. But anyways. And then likewise with all of our other discussions, all these characters are fictional. They have no intended resemblances to like any real people or things or stuff. So yeah, just like keep that in mind as we talk about these characters, no resemblance to any real person. And our final warning here, we are not licensed therapists, so we are not making any sort of official diagnoses. We're just using the knowledge that we gained from our graduate classes to see if these characters fit any sort of like psychological disorders. And then what's going to be new in this episode is see how the treatments for these psychological disorders look like. I guess with that being said, I'll go ahead and describe the game.
Okay, take it away.
Yeah. So Dead Space Remake, like I said, is a remake of the original Dead Space horror action video game that came out in 2008. In this game, follows our main character, Isaac Clarke, who is an engineer who was sent to repair a broken down mining spaceship. The spaceship, which is called the Ishimura, held thousands of crew members, including Isaac's girlfriend, Nicole Brennan, who was a medical officer on that ship. Upon arrival to the Ishimura, we discover that nearly everyone on board has been killed, and now these strange creatures called the necromorphs are roaming on board and like killing any leftover survivors. So Isaac is trying to cooperate with the few remaining personnel on board as they kind of like guide him through the different parts of the spaceship, locations throughout, so Isaac can fix the Ishimura and rescue anybody else on board, but secretly he's just worried about his girlfriend. It feels like throughout the whole game he's just constantly looking for her. I guess we'll talk about that a bit more later, but in general with this game, it is mostly a faithful remake of the original. I think only some minor plot differences like were made. Like didn't you say that something with the marriage? I think like in the old game it was his wife, or maybe in this game it's his wife.
I think so they're older in the remake. I think
they're older in the remake.
Yeah, they're older in the remake. I'm not sure if they're married in the remake. I didn't play the remake. Didn't check it out. I was like, you know what? I'll wait for a price drop. So that's what I did, waiting on a really good price drop. But I think they're older. I know they added like extra sections to the ship or something.
Oh, okay.
Because I think now there's like paths you can go down, right? There's like little like diverting paths. The original didn't have that.
Oh,
yeah.
got it.
That's what I know from what's different.
Sorry, you just dropped the bomb on me. You didn't play the remake?
No.
Oh. What? Okay. This whole time. You've been lying to me, Joe.
It's all right. I played the original. I was there day one.
Yeah, you were a day one fan. That's fine. I'm just the bandwagoner now. It's all good. But yeah, let me give a quick rundown on the gameplay, like a description of the gameplay for anybody who hasn't actually played this game, Joe. But I'm just kidding. I know you're.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. So yeah, this game starts off as a third-person action adventure shooter. So you're given these weapons as you explore the Ishimura to defend yourself from these attacking necromorphs. And I think one of the big selling points of this game was kind of the combat with the necromorphs. And they introduced the ability, I don't know if they were the first game to ever really do this, probably not, but they certainly popularized the ability to shoot off specific limbs and parts of the enemy, and then the enemy AI will react depending on what body part was just shot off. So for example, if you like shoot off their legs, then they start crawling with their extra arms and appendages just to try to get to you and kill you still. And then if you shot off they have these like claw-like things, like these, they kind of look like swords or like a praying mantis.
Yeah, kind of like a scyther, thing. Right?
Yeah, scyther. Yeah, the Pokemon scyther. Yeah, they got those blades at the end of their arms. So if you shoot those off, then you feel a bit less worried, because if they do approach you, then you know you're not going to instantly get stabbed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you shoot their heads off, but not their other limbs, right, they're still going to chase after you. They don't die with a headshot.
Dang. Yeah, those types of like quote unquote zombies that will continuously attack you even with their head blown off that's another scary concept. But yeah, other than the combat, you're usually walking down these like dark hallways or tight corridors, and they tend to have some jump scares waiting for you. These necromorphs will pop out of vents or doorways or just around the corner and stuff. And they kind of create suspense by only giving you just enough ammo to get by. You're not, I think playing on the normal difficulty, you are not going to have like a lot of ammo for majority of the game. At least I didn't, because I kept on trying to shoot everything and was missing. That helps build the suspense while you're playing. And there's also a few bosses that you fight throughout the game. Those usually take place in certain areas or in like the ends of certain areas and certain like branches of the Ishimura, and those kind of change up the gameplay a bit, where you have unique mechanics to those bosses to defeat them. Yeah. And the end of the game actually has you off the Ishimura and exploring, I don't remember what planet it was, but it kind of looked like Mars. Was that in the original game?
Yeah, because you fight like the giant boss at the end, right?
Yeah. That's Sorry, you were looking at me away, and I was just like, oh shit, maybe that's a new thing.
Is that
too.
wrong? Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that kind of gives a summary here. And just to give a quick rundown of how we're going to go about with this episode, Joe's going to give us the character discussion of Isaac Clarke, and then he's also going to give us a treatment plan for Isaac's disorders. And after that, I'm going to come back and then give us a little summary of how the psychology behind video games, of horror video games in particular, like maybe some design choices and some articles I found, some research, and yeah. So, with that being said, I think we're ready to see what's going on with Isaac Clarke.
All right, so let's get to the character discussion. So some background info on Isaac Clarke. He was born on June 5th, 2461. So this is not anytime soon, right? So don't worry about those necromorphs. Lived with his father, Paul Clarke, and Octavia Clarke in northeastern American seaboard sector, right? He lived most of his life with his mom. His father was absent. He'd go on a lot of missions. I think he was part of like merchant marines or something, because Isaac becomes a merchant marine as well.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
He's part of like some sector or something that helps with like building ships and whatnot. So he's gone most of the time. So Isaac is living with mom. And going through the wiki and everything, Octavia, his mom, suffered from loneliness and was recommended by a psychiatrist to join a community. In this case, it was the Church of Unitology, right? So with the Church of Unitology, right, she joined up, became part of a community. But the thing is, the way it works is that, you rise rank in this church by purchasing the title. So you're using money to rise the ranks, right?
I could think of some current analogous religion here.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
No affiliation.
We won't say much, right? So Isaac wants to be an engineer like his father, right? He's pretty smart. He's a smart dude, right? Gets into a prestigious college, but can't afford it. Right. I don't know what the tuition is out in space in university, right? Especially in 24 or whatever.
Yeah. Probably talking billions of dollars if the
something like that
inflation rate stays. Yeah.
But, Isaac's mom decided to use all the money that's saved up, to purchase ranks in the Church of Unitology.
Okay. So instead of him going to college, she was taking that money for the church.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't go to a prestigious one. He went to like one that, Wiki says like a backwater college. That sounds so mean.
Backwater college.
Yeah.
Damn.
But I mean, I was like, that's brutal, right?
Poor
I don't
Isaac.
know. But he made it through, but this is where his distrust and kind of like his hatred for the Church of Unitology starts, right? Mom was spending the money, right? He could have went to a prestigious college, right? So he goes to college, to a backwater one, I guess. Becomes a mechanical, electrical engineer, becomes part of like the merchant vessel, like organization in the Deadspace universe, right? Eventually, and we'll get into a little bit about mom as well. In 2505, mom was admitted to a psychiatric center due to her declining mental health. So this brings up the issue that mental health issues are running in the family, right? Genetic.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that they're already predisposed to something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which is something real. Like in the real life that can occur.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you see the horrors that Isaac goes through in the game.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. But we'll get to it, right?
Yes.
So during his mom's therapy sessions, Isaac met Dr. Nicole Brennan, and the two began a romantic relationship, which you can't do that. At least not out here in California.
Wait a second. So Nicole Brennan was his mom's therapist?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, what? So I went onto CAMFT, which is like the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, right? And like, it's unethical. You cannot date a client's child or a client themselves unless after a certain amount of time after termination. And at least 2 years. Which is weird to me, because when I was taking a law and ethics class, I was like, I thought you could just never, right? Because you're in a vulnerable space in therapy, right?
Yeah.
No, California thinks it's all right after 2 years. So
2 years, you're
I don't know
longer vulnerable.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like in space, right? But that's unethical, at least here.
That's wild. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I put that in there because I found that interesting. I was like, okay.
So glad you did.
He's dating his mother's therapist. Eventually, they have a blooming relationship, right? They're very supportive. Nicole eventually, learns about a position opening up in the planet cracker Ishimura, which is the ship where the game takes place. And with Isaac's encouragement, he's like, hey, you should take the job, right?
I'm sorry, real quick. Planet cracker is literal where like the planet, this is a ship that is meant to
harvest materials and whatnot.
Harvest materials from the planet. Okay, because you said planet cracker, and I've immediately thought of like a little cracker wafer type thing.
Gotcha.
I'm like, what the hell? That's a weird naming. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that for me, for anybody else who might have been confused.
There's a lot to this. The lore, like going through the wiki and like, oh yeah, I remember this, that, right? I mean, the merchant marines and stuff, it's like they thought it out, even if there's not that much information on what the merchant marines really do. They work on ships, right? So Nicole was, again, Octavia's therapist, right?
Yeah.
So she was in a psychiatric care, but eventually I think Octavia was deemed to be, okay, like to go on her own, right? She was deemed high functioning. Isaac's mom would commit suicide after she was released from psychiatric care.
Oh.
And she killed Isaac's father as well. So it was a murder-suicide.
Jesus. Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty heavy, right?
Damn, I did not know that occurred in this game.
Yeah, and this is just like the background of just,
oh my gosh,
what was going on. Also, the Church of Unitology was being very sketchy. They confiscated the bodies of both mom and dad and wouldn't allow Isaac like to see the bodies or like funeral, to have a funeral to mourn or anything like that. So Isaac's, hatred and distrust of the church grew even more.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense now. I mean, the fact that the Church of Unitology comes up in his background, I had no idea, and it makes a lot of sense because you see the church come up throughout the game.
Oh yeah, and Deadspace 2, I think it's a whole sector too.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like there's a whole level dedicated to it. That happens. Isaac blames Nicole in like a transmission or something. Blames her for why did you let her, leave? She wasn't okay. This is your fault. So
yeah.
Ends up blaming Nicole, right? So when the game starts, that transmission that you see of Nicole just saying like her goodbye, saying I'm okay or whatever, right? There's that context. Is that Isaac blames her for, the murder-suicide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like she doesn't take the blame very well.
She's upset. I mean, could you imagine? That's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
So she's still working on the Ishimura, right? All hell breaks loose of the Ishimura with the necromorphs and whatnot. So that transmission of her just, saying goodbye to Isaac, or whatever, so he tries to save her, right? But the thing is, she's already dead. She's gone. She committed suicide, right? So Isaac is believing in a delusion that she's still alive, right? Because he goes and I think he believes he can save her, but she's gone already.
As somebody who did not know about this background and remembering throughout the game when you see these flashbacks of her, I'm assuming these memories that he has had of conversations they might have had, or as somebody who didn't have any background info on this game, to know that, what was I saying? Shoot. Oh, yeah. So he kept on seeing her throughout the game.
And I think he has conversations with her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I remember.
From what I remember.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was some point where they had this like they were somehow able to communicate with each other for like a moment or two, and then she was dead, so it was all just in his head anyways. But wow, that's crazy because you get the feeling as you're playing through the game that he's imagining that she's alive, that this is all just fake, but not fake. It's real to him because he's having these delusions. But to know that she is actually dead makes a lot of sense now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So delusions. So all in all, Isaac volunteers to respond to the emergency, because of Nicole, right? Of course, he's trying to save other people as well, right? But that's the context of how he gets onto the ship. Part of the game, like the whole game, right? I mean, there's the necromorph outbreak. I mean, we talked about them, kind of like zombies, right? With elongated, sharp limbs, kind of think of like Scyther, right?
Yeah.
You shoot off the limbs to render them useless. So I don't know where I heard this, but I think they actually don't die. So they can regenerate or something. They're still alive when they're like have no limbs left.
Oh, like
they just can't attack you anymore.
Oh, so in the game, if you successfully shoot out all the limbs, then they'll just
plop over,
exist,
right? But they still exist. They're not dead. And look into the wiki. The sole purpose of the necromorphs is to acquire more corpses, spread their infection. They're trying to get rid of all organic life in the universe.
Aren't they like? I don't know. Are they not organic? Are they not like a creature, or are they just trying to like kind of hive mind convert everything else?
I think it's the hive mind, because they do have their hive mind. I think you fight the hive mind at the end, right, of Deadspace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the necromorphs are controlled by these things called the markers. Have you ever seen was it 2001 Space Odyssey? You know how that
Yeah, the obelisk.
the obelisk kind of think like that, right? That's what a
Yeah.
marker is, right? So the point of the markers is like it gives the directions to the necromorphs, right? It's like destroy all organic life, become a mass, a blob to consume all organic life, right? Very horrifying stuff.
Yeah, very body horror.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just an amalgamation of flesh is usually what it looks like. It is. Yeah.
It's not
disturbing.
pretty. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, think about it. Isaac is witnessing violent deaths, right? And he has to pacify these monsters to stay alive. Also, he has no combat experience. So even though he was part of the Merchant Marines just work on ships. They have no combat training. So when you're playing as Isaac, you're playing as a nerdy guy.
Yeah.
Right? Picks up like a plasma cutter or something, or that's the main weapon,
gun.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the best weapon.
I know.
If you upgrade that all the way, you're good. You don't need anything else, really.
Yeah, this weapon is pretty much just fires in like either a straight vertical or horizontal line, and you can change, and it will cut off the limb if you like shoot at that same limb like twice in a row. It was very useful.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's a very good weapon. So again, looking through the wiki, I found something about marker dementia, which is dementia that is a serious loss of cognitive abilities. This kind of manifests as acute depression, insomnia, personality shifts, hallucinations, violent behavior, and schizophrenic-like symptoms, right? This is all from the marker's influence. And if you do play Dead Space 2 and 3, you see that influence on Isaac.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
thought this was a real thing for a second.
No, marker
like,
dementia.
Marker dementia. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, no. I was like, oh, okay. This is what the game defines it as, right? This is what the universe defines, like in the game, right? And I was like, okay, that's interesting, right? Because dementia is like that here, right? In our real life society, real world, right? Of course, they're gonna gamify it, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be, more dramatic, dramatized, right? But yeah, I mean, so that's the game, right? I mean, you're trying to survive. You're trying to save as many people as you can. You're trying to find your girlfriend, even though she's gone. And yeah, you're trying to survive. I mean, it's a survival horror, right?
Yeah, survival horror. It's wild how like the game progresses narratively from like just trying to survive to pretty much my remembering. I feel like everybody who has helped you like dies, or who tries to help you ends up dying. I don't know if anyone ever like successfully escapes from them. And then you get off the ship, but then you're just immediately met with like the biggest necromorph that you've faced. Or like, what was it called? I know it was supposed to represent the hive mind. Was it called the hive mind?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I have not played this game in a long time.
I know.
It's been years.
I kind of want to Google it, but
yeah, we can definitely
let's
look it up.
See real quick.
Dead Space final boss.
Remake,
right?
final boss. Oh, it's
the hive
called
mind.
the hive mind.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. Once you said it, I'm like, that does sound kind of familiar.
Yeah. Okay. How'd you like that boss fight?
I remember. Oh man, I'm a little baby, and I put it to easy mode.
Gotcha. No worries.
So
I didn't play the remake.
Well, I mean, I don't know how hard the original one was, but something tells me it was harder than the remake. But I think halfway through the game, I put it to easy. There's some chase sequence that happened halfway through the game that I kept on dying at, and it just kind of became frustrating. So
was it the regenerator or that necromorph that doesn't die?
Yeah.
I hate that part. Yeah.
Very much like what's his name? Like a Mr.
X. Or what is his name? From Resident Evil, Nemesis.
Yeah.
He chases you as well.
Exactly. So because of that, I was just like, oh, man, this isn't even fun anymore. I'm just constantly dying and losing. And then I was stuck. There was some sort of puzzle thing that I couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about.
like, oh man, forget it. No, it's not fun anymore. So, but it was still fun.
It's a good game. Yeah.
So anyways, to answer your original question, that final boss, I remember being surprisingly complicated for it being on easy in terms of mechanics, or like dodging his attacks and stuff.
It's like a giant tentacle that just drops,
it's just
right?
yeah, and you had to read it, you had to move out of the way. I felt like compared to the other bosses, this one was a bit more in depth and a bit more action-y. So I remember enjoying it, but also being a bit surprised by it because it didn't feel quite as like horror as the other ones.
It's a video game boss, right? Yeah. It felt like a video game boss, right?
Yeah. It was the most normal video gamey thing about this.
Yeah.
About the game.
Gotcha. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were about to say no, he was the easiest one, so I just
No, I wouldn't do that to
I
you.
was playing on hard and he was yeah. I don't know. You like a challenge. I'm the opposite.
No, as I get older, I'm like, oh, let's go back to normal, easy. Just because it's like there's so much to play, right? And so little, like we have limited time now,
Totally.
right? But yeah, so let's get back to his personality.
Yeah. Tell me about this guy.
He's a smart dude, right? I mean, he graduated top of his class. I wish they would tell us what college, or they made up a college, or just whatever.
Some backwater college.
Yeah,
though.
some backwater college, right? He's a hard worker, quick learner. I mean, he like the plasma cutter, right? That was all him. Right?
He adapted to a situation very quickly.
Yeah, because that's just a mining tool.
Yeah,
right?
and he learned how to
tool.
make that a weapon.
Yeah, he made it a weapon. He's also empathetic as he tries to, save others, right? The whole reason he's going is because he wants to save his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, just a little bit about him. So we'll get into the case study real quick. Any comments or anything you want to touch upon?
I felt like, oh, you didn't play the remake. I'm trying to remember if like he expressed any fear like throughout doing this or anxiety. I thought that we could have seen more. I wanted to have more like dialogue from him just to like hear more of his like inner thoughts and stuff. But I don't know, because it seemed like he was just thrown into the situation. He seemed a little scared, but he also seemed like I don't know, just handled it pretty well given the scenario.
It's just another Tuesday.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He was very nonchalant about it.
Oh yeah,
I'm
and the
like,
original he was like that
what?
too. Yeah, the original was like he didn't care. He just rolled with the punches.
Yeah.
Right? So I thought the remake added a little bit more from what I remember, but I guess
I think so. Well, I didn't play the original, so that's funny. We're on the opposite ends
Right.
here. So I don't know. I don't know what the dialogue was like for him on the original. But I also kind of would have liked to see a bit more. Maybe they dive into this in the future games. Like history of his mental illness, like because we only find out kind of at the end of the first game that he was probably hallucinating a lot of this stuff, and I'm curious to know if like this happened before, or like at what point did he start having these hallucinations and delusions, because it sounds like he had a very tragic and traumatic life or backstory with his parents and with his girlfriend,
right.
So yeah, it's just one of those cases where you want to know if if like one of these deaths or something set off the delusion or like triggered the I don't want to reveal what the diagnosis is yet,
Right.
but yeah.
No, I understand. Yeah. No, you did have a lot of triggering things happening, right? And this was happening, as he was a kid. Dad wasn't there, right? Mom was involved in church, so I'm pretty sure he was lonely, right? Isolated. As he gets older, I mean, it's murder suicide, right? I mean, even if you're an adult, that's gonna mess you up, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. So yeah, I mean, he's been through a lot. I mean, we can get into the
Yeah,
case
go ahead
study.
and we'll do the official case study that we would write in for a job or like for school at least, where we have to write up all of the attributes, the background, and things that we think are pertinent to the diagnosis of a disorder.
And real quick, just our usual reminder, right? This is all fictional. Right?
Yeah.
Don't take this too seriously. I mean, it's a fictional character, right? We're just doing this to have a little bit of fun. Took a lot of abnormal psych classes in grad school. That was the whole program, essentially, right? But yeah. So with that out of the way, I'm gonna cover some information. We're gonna go through it again. But Isaac Clarke, during the remake, I looked it up. He's like between the ages of 47 and 49, right? So I think he's older in the remake than the original.
Damn, homeboy never had any combat experience and nearly 50 years old, comes in and like, oh wow,
He's ready to go.
Okay.
Right? So he survived multiple horrifying atrocities. I mean, the whole game, zombies, right? He sees people die. There's just a lot going on. So like I mentioned, he grew up alone with his mom. His father was mostly absent during his work, requiring him to leave for extended amounts of time. Isaac claims that his mother suffered from loneliness and was eventually recommended by a psychiatrist to join a community, and she gravitated towards the Church of Unitology. Isaac despises the Church of Unitology, claiming that they had caused his mother to lose herself even further. Isaac, has reported that his mother has utilized the funds, in the past to purchase ranks in the Church of Unitology. So this is where his hatred comes from, right? He also claims that his mom was hospitalized in a psychiatric ward for her mental health, and she eventually took her own life and the life of his father in a murder-suicide. Isaac further explores his resentment towards the church and begrudgingly endorsed as the reason why he was unable to attend his dream university. So even in like Dead Space 2, like that that hatred, you see it, right? It's there. He has a reason why. So he, Isaac's a merchant marine. He was tasked to aid the repairs of merchant vessels in space, right? So that's what he was good at, repairs, and that's why it makes sense why he's on the Ishimura, right? He's an engineer. He wanted to see what's going on. His girlfriend happened to be there at the time as well. She sent a distressing message, so of course he's gonna go, right? Even though they didn't end the relationship, but it was kind of like on bad terms, right? He claimed that because of my girlfriend was a psychologist, right? You deemed her healthy enough to leave. She was not healthy enough to leave, right? She killed herself and killed his dad.
Yeah.
So that's pretty heavy. But, he volunteers. He goes on the Ishimura. He encounters horrific creatures. We've talked about that, kills a lot of his teammates. And also any residents left, right? Those guys are gone. Isaac experiences visual and auditory hallucinations of his girlfriend, who he has. So at the end, he admits it to himself, like, yeah, I knew you were dead. But at the beginning of the game, he's not ready to admit it. He was delusional. He was deluding himself. Yeah. He did not want to accept the truth and believe that, but he would rather believe in the delusion that she was alive, right? It put his mind at ease. So Isaac put himself in dangerous situations for the sake of saving his girlfriend, despite her being gone. Isaac had to, butcher his way to survival, right? I mean, how many necromorphs do we dispose of in the game? Like too many to count, right?
Yeah,
I wonder if there's a counter out there or something, right?
Yeah, some sort of post-game stat of like how many necromorphs you killed, how many limbs you shot off.
Yeah, I don't know, right? I mean, that'd be pretty cool.
There's probably a mod for it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he, in the future games, he has flashbacks and kind of, relives what is going on. Also, he claims that he has the blueprints of the marker which spawn and control the goal of the necromorphs to extinguish our organic like. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So essentially, his time in the Ishimura left him scarred, right?
Yeah.
And the markers have chosen him to kind of keep that knowledge and recreate a marker, right? If need be, right? So he has this knowledge stuck in his head, right? So he's haunted by this time on the Ishimura.
Yeah.
It's constantly in his mind, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. Dead Space 2, like, there's a whole plot line. Like, they're looking for Isaac because he has this knowledge. Right? The church wants that knowledge. But, we're talking about the remake, the original, right?
Given all of this history and given these experiences he had, what do you feel like? What psychological disorder do you think he might suffer from?
So, again, we're doing this for fun, right? Yeah. I'm not trying to say mental health disorders are fun, right? But this is like, I take my work seriously, when I work with clients. So I took some time, and was like, okay, Isaac, let's say he walked in, right? After a couple sessions. Yeah, I'm comfortable with assigning schizophrenia. He has two of the more following, which are delusions and hallucinations. He's deluding himself, believing that his girlfriend is alive, right? He has hallucinations, right? He sees her. Yeah. Right? There are things that are going on that actually aren't happening. So that already meets criteria 1, right? You need 2 of those, delusions and hallucinations. He meets both. There's other ones like disorganized speech, negative symptoms such as diminished emotional expression, which you can kind of make a case for because he's not as expressive during the game, right?
Oh, yeah. I was literally talking about that earlier. I wanted him to chat more.
Yeah. So, hey, maybe,
that's a good point.
Maybe it's, that's more evidence for the diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
So the second criteria is a significant portion of time since the onset of disturbance, leveling function in one or more areas such as work, interpersonal relationships, or self-care is markedly below the level achieved prior to the onset, right? So he's doing worse now, right? you can argue like, hey, he's not doing as good, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense. So he meets that criteria, and this has persisted for the last 6 months. This is criteria 3. This 6-month period must include at least 1 month of symptoms that we talked about in criteria 1, which are the hallucinations and delusions. This stuff continues on, I think, into Deadspace 3 as well. So this is sticking with him. Number 4, schizoaffective disorder and depressive or bipolar disorder with psychotic features have been ruled out. So no major depressive or manic episodes, right? If mood episodes have occurred during an active phase, they have been present for a minority of total duration of the active and residual periods of the illness. So we'll discuss what this all means, right? Because this is all like jargon at this point. So from what I remember in the original, I wouldn't say he's depressed, right? I wouldn't say he's manic, right? So we can rule that out.
Right.
As if mood episodes, I don't think he has any. I don't think there are any mood episodes going on. You know, he's trying to put up, you know, he's trying to survive, right? I think that's the whole point.
Yeah. And these mood, the mood, manic and depressive episodes, those are it's necessary to distinguish them, because otherwise that's like the defining feature for a depressive or bipolar disorder. So that's why we have to state how these things must have been ruled out in order for this to be schizophrenia or a psychotic disorder.
Yeah, this is just stuff we had to do in our program, right? Roll it out. Why isn't it not schizoaffective? Why isn't it bipolar 2 or 1, right? Why isn't it major depressive disorder, right? So we're doing a little bit of that. Not as in depth, because we're not being graded, right? We don't have a professor breathing down our neck like, you better get this right.
Shouts out to Dr. Victor.
Right. All right, so let's move on to 5. The disturbance is not attributable to the psychological effects of a substance. So, I mean, you could say that the marker has been producing all this, right? But that's not a substance, right?
Right. It's not like a drug, like a drug or like alcohol or some other medication or a medical condition, right?
So there's nothing on that going on. No history of, this is number 6, right? It says if there's a history of autism spectrum disorder, communication disorder, we don't know that, right? That information isn't there. You know, we don't want to make anything up, right? So we can roll that out. And so that is enough for us to, you know, diagnose Isaac with schizophrenia. We've been talking about PTSD a lot on this podcast, right? So quick mention, there's most likely some PTSD there, right? I would be surprised if there wasn't.
It's starting to feel like every main character, video game character, has PTSD though. So it's like, I mean, we could, we'll probably still talk about it, but we wanted to change it up a bit or do a slightly different disorder.
Right. And, you know, we looked into the information, the wiki, all we could find, right? And this fits with, you know, what's going on with the diagnosis, you know, but again, quick mention to PTSD. So we're going to move on to the treatment plan. And so in my therapy, when I work with clients, I do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? So very you know, what's the issue? How can we, you know, deal with the issue? What are some healthy alternatives, whatnot, right? CBT is focused on behaviors, emotions, and thoughts, and all of that mixed into a situation that makes an issue. So it's based on psychological problems are based in fault or on faulty thinking. So you know, what's your thinking like? Are you making it an issue? Right? It's going to be an issue, right? What are your learned patterns? You know, what is that unhelpful behavior that continues this way of thinking, continues this cycle, right? And also another basis of CBT is people suffering from psychological problems can learn better ways of coping with them, with their issues, right? Relieving symptoms and becoming more effective in their lives. So what you're trying to do with CBT is like, okay, I see what you're bringing in. I see the maladaptive, you know, coping mechanisms. How can we turn that around and give you some healthy ones, right? Some more that you can practice. So treatment plans, you know, we did these in grad school as well. I do them at work as well. So I cut it into multiple pieces. So an intro phase, you know, what therapy would look like is you're going to have to develop a working relationship and build rapport with the client. There's nothing worse than having a client and a therapist that do not get along, because nothing is going to get done, right? If they're butting heads, you know, they're not a good fit, you know, and I think it's good to say, you know, like, hey, you know, if you're going through mental health troubles, right, and maybe that therapist isn't for you, you know, you can look around, right? You don't have to feel stuck.
Yeah. For everybody, honestly, like if your therapist doesn't fit what you need or your vibe, then definitely find another one.
Oh yeah, definitely. Right. I mean, I've had clients that, you know, like we don't vibe well. Right. But then I have some that, you know, take time and like, we're all good now. Right. And we can get to work, you know, so developing that working relationship is key. Like that is key. Right. Also assessing individual cultural and diversity differences, you know, so like, you know, how would somebody from a certain culture react to this information or to what's going on, right? That kind of stuff. Also, you want to be looking for schemas and irrational beliefs. This is CBT. So what are their negative beliefs about the world? You know, how do they behave with these beliefs, that kind of stuff. So with Isaac, we'd have to be like, okay, what do you believe about the world? Is it super dangerous? Is it, you know, everyone's trying to kill you, that kind of stuff, right? We need to assess that stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because, I mean, like, obviously, if Isaac walked into your office, like right now, and told you everything that we just read, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But it's a game, so you know he actually experienced this. So there were these zombies that were trying to kill you.
And then we're going to identify with some goals with the client, agree upon, the goals that, we set out. Again, your therapist can set goals for you, but I think it's better to take a collaborative approach, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, both of you are going to work on this together. Also, you want to identify referrals and crisis intervention. So in this case, with Isaac being so, dealing with a lot of mental health issues, do we need a safety plan, right? Is he thinking about, maybe harming himself or harming others, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Also referrals, which I don't know what kind of space groups there are out there in space in 2025, whatever, when this game takes place, right?
Yeah.
So we would need maybe some extra supports.
You would hope that mental health only got better, or mental health support got better by then. But
by then, yeah. So moving on to the client goals, right? So we're going to want to decrease worries and stress through challenging and decreasing the frequency of his delusions and hallucinations. So it sounds like a lot of his delusions and hallucinations, right, are producing worries and stress. So we want to decrease all that. Right? We want to decrease his worry and stress and the frequency of these hallucinations, right? So some interventions that, I looked up that I might use. With CBT, it's a lot of psychoeducation, right? We're going to be talking about cognitive distortions, which is faulty thinking, right? How we think about the world, right? And negative schemas. Again, these are world beliefs. We're going to learn about them. We're going to talk about them. And we're going to see what Isaac is really experiencing in his world. So one intervention I have here, besides the psychoeducation, is having Isaac challenge reality by writing down the hallucinations and delusions and actively challenging them with his own narrative. So meaning every time he sees Nicole or every time he thinks he hears her voice or whatever, he's going to write it down, right? And he's going to challenge it. Meaning hey, is this actually happening, right? He's going to challenge his narrative.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that way he knows hey, this isn't real. It's not happening. Systemic desensitization, which is, we talk about that all the time, right? Especially with CBTs, you're going to be using your healthy coping mechanisms in times of need. So whatever that is, deep breathing, mindfulness breathing, somatic stuff. And I think I talked about the safety plan as well as a potential intervention just in case.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the working phase of therapy, so what we're going to be doing.
Yeah,
right?
Sorry. I just wanted to cut in real quick. What you just described was the initial phase / the client goal. And now we're into the working phase.
Yeah.
But I noticed that, these are two different phases. Is there something that occurs between, or do you have to hit a certain point to then move on to the next phase?
No. So these are just my thoughts of okay, so initially knowing about Isaac, right? This is what I want to work on. Right.
Oh, okay.
The working phase is what we're both working on in therapy in sessions.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this is where the therapist is going to monitor the worries and stress, so I'm going to be checking in, how many times is this happening? How many hallucinations are you having per day, right? Per week.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to monitor that because we want to make sure that those decrease, right? I want a number. If he says 10 a week, right? Let's say some therapy after all of this happening, the challenging and all that, the interventions and whatnot. Hey, maybe he's down to 5 a week, right? That's already substantially way better.
Yeah. So you want to see that there's some sort of progress being made in the
I want to see hard progress.
Yeah.
And using that through cognitive restructuring, right? So that's what the challenging his own narrative does, right? It challenges assumptions. What's the evidence that this is actually happening, that Nicole is there, right? She's gone. She's gone, so you're gathering that evidence. You're finding your own evidence, right? To challenge those assumptions, to, think in other ways, healthier ways, right? So that's kind of what we would want to be doing, right? I don't know what the healthcare system is or mental health system in space. I don't know how many sessions we get, right? Some will give you a couple sessions, right? Some of them will keep you around for a year or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that we can't account for, right? But let's say, we're going through the working phase. He's doing better, right? At the end, you're going to develop an aftercare plan. So what that means is how can we make sure that once you're done with therapy, right, what can you do to continue this healthy coping? So you're going to talk about, maintaining that healthy coping, right? Perhaps some support groups after. Those can be very helpful. You also want to review that stuff with the client, what's changed, their progress, right? And encourage them to continue. You're doing well. And so that's the closing phase. And so the closing goals, right? This is goes into the aftercare plan as well, is we want to further decrease the hallucinations, delusions to 0. That's going to be it. But that might be on Isaac's part, once he's out of therapy. So one thing that I found useful as an intervention to walk away with, and even within session, is a thought record. Have you ever heard of those?
No. Well, yeah, tell me about it.
So essentially what a thought record is, it's, let's say you get a negative thought, right? Like, oh, my friend doesn't like me. You assign a percentage to that thought of how, I guess, like evident that is, of how prevalent that is. Like if it's true, right? Do you actually believe what you're telling yourself? So there can be a triggering situation. Let's say you had a day out with a friend, right? And they weren't feeling well. They kind of felt off, right? Okay, my friend doesn't like me, right? But it's like, okay, assign a percentage, right? What else might have been going on? What is the strength of those beliefs? So this is how you question it. You assign a percentage, right? Let's say it's 20%, right? You're like, well, it's only 20%, right? Where's the other 80? Right. That way you challenge that thought, that negative thought.
Oh, okay.
And it goes more in depth than that. There's like a whole textbook on this stuff and all that kind of stuff that we could go through, but I don't want to bore the listeners to like another case study, from a textbook. But that's the gist of it. That's what a thought record does, and I think that'd be something helpful for Isaac to walk away with at the end of this.
Yeah, I could see that. You went through more school than I did to become like a therapist, so I'm unaware of a lot of these techniques, and it's very interesting. I feel like I'm learning just like sitting here listening to you, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, again, like there's so much to, not only just CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but there's so many schools of thoughts, especially when it comes to therapy. And I wanted to focus on this because I'm more comfortable with CBT. But yeah, this was this section. I mean, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, no, that, like I just said, that was fascinating. I feel like CBT is one that it seemed like in the past like 10 years or so is very prevalent now and like commonly used for good reason, because it seems like quite effective by challenging these thoughts, these negative thoughts that are typically had by the person, and then trying to change up the behavior with that, associated with that. So I don't know. I really dug it. So
yeah, no, thank you. And I mean, just food for thought. The insurance companies love CBT because you gauge that stuff, right? You have hard evidence.
Oh, right.
So this is like a school of thought that's like, yeah, and it's evidence-based as well, right? But it's not for everyone. Not every client's going to want CBT. I don't know if Isaac wants CBT, right? He might want like a narrative focused therapist, right? Where we plot out the narrative, we talk about it, right? And then we change that narrative. You're a survivor, you're not a victim, that kind of stuff, right? Changing the language for him, right? I see. CBT's not going to do that for you.
Yeah, I completely forgot about the insurance aspect too. I remember reading that somewhere of like the reasons.
I think we had like a reading about that. Yeah.
It was in our class. Like, oh yeah, the insurers love CBT.
They love it, right? Yeah. But I actually really like CBT because you can monitor the progress, right? And a lot of clients, seem to appreciate that. Right?
Yeah, and I'm sure it feels good for the client, to see how they are making progress and see like that hard, that concrete evidence of them getting better.
Okay. Time for that horror game discussion.
Yeah. So
I'm waiting.
Yeah, I know. I this will just be like just a little drop in the bucket of like so many different psychological concepts and video game design concepts. I feel like this is gonna try to skim the surface of both these worlds. And what initially made or like influenced me to talk about this is kind of like how I said at the beginning, where I don't get scared that easily, like from games. There's certainly some real life situations I've been in where I was terrified.
No, I understand.
But,
like movies I can do. Horror movies, love them.
Yeah.
Right. I can't get enough of them. It's just the horror games.
It's the games for you.
It's the games. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we'll see why that is.
But I'm fascinated by, like, I'm always talking about Silent Hill with you and whatnot, right? And it's like I'm fascinated by that.
I know,
right? But I just never played them though.
Oh man, I think one of the scariest movies I saw was like, I was little when I first saw it, and it messed me up. First Paranormal Activity.
Okay.
Yeah, just that real life setting of it. So maybe like good horror films will like get me a bit stronger than games. So anyways, that's why I was, interested in this. What does the game do to make you feel scared and feel terrified when you know that you are physically safe and that you are just consuming this like piece of media? So, before I like dive into the research and stuff, I was just thinking, okay, well, these games need to be able to do a good job at immersing the player into this world. And the players must then have to resonate with the characters, identify with the characters, and then feel like they are the character in the situation. And turns out that there is a phenomena that has been heavily researched for this. I believe it's called player avatar identification. There's different names for it, but I think that was one of the ones that kept on popping up whenever I was like looking for articles.
And it sounds legit too.
Yeah, player avatar identification. Yeah. It's what a James Cameron based Avatar off of. But yeah, so this needs to occur when you're playing a game, or not just a horror game, but any game really, where you eventually fall into identifying with that character. That's why you have like a lot of character customization. You invest a lot of time into it, and you feel like that character is a part of you. So you go into these games feeling like you're a part of the game. And that's kind of cool. I don't know. I like that about video games.
That's why I don't like horror games. Yeah. I don't want to see my character die.
And that's why I'm so interested by it, because it's like, okay, in this instance, I could feel scared. Like I want to feel scared in here. So real quick, I pulled this article just randomly from, it was like some LinkedIn article written by some game developers talking about several factors that need to be kept in mind when developing a horror game. And I'm just going to go through the list here. So the first one they list is pacing. And this makes so much sense. So for a horror game, the pace needs to be slowed down considerably compared to like any other game, like an action game or a racing game, or even a sports game will have a faster pacing than a horror game. This way, the player does not know when the next quote unquote event will occur. An event can be like combat or run or like a chase or something like that. And, compared to an action or adventure game, these events are happening constantly. You are constantly shooting someone. You are constantly running, flying, jumping, whatever. There's just always actions happening.
Right. Very fast pace.
Yeah. Right. Even in Dead Space Remake does this very well. They strategically place like a lot of, even before like the environment, the run speed, I feel like, even of Isaac, it's not very fast. You don't feel like you are very fast. You feel like you're lugging a lot of heavy stuff.
You're not a track star.
No, definitely not. And nor should you be at a 50-year-old engineer who
without combat experience.
Yeah. So I give him a pass, but Dead Space Remake does a great job at setting this up by making you feel slow, by creating these environments that take a while to get through, and anything can happen inside of them. So pace needs to be slow for a horror game. Now, let's go on to setting. So setting, not necessarily environment, but just like an overall setting of the game world. So like the setting needs to convey a feeling of loneliness and isolation within the world. You need to make the player or character feel like no one is going to come to rescue them if something goes wrong. Okay. So that's why you see a lot of horror games such as this one. You're on this abandoned mining ship flowing through this vast space, and you kind of were the backup. You were the team that was supposed to or you were the character that's supposed to come and rescue them. So knowing that you are the backup coming into this scenario makes you feel even worse.
Yeah, there's pressure there.
Yeah,
right.
There's a lot of pressure.
And you're always in not always, but you're in confined spaces, right? The Ishimura is just, like you said, just a ship in space.
Yeah.
Right? How are you going to leave?
Exactly. And like in the game, you do leave a bit. Like you leave the ship just for a little. Like, and in the game world, it's developed so that you can't go out of bounds there. But when you look around, you don't see anything. You're just on the ship. Like the only thing nearby is the ship and then like some other stars or stuff. But obviously the stars are light years away. So you're just out there on your own, floating in the space.
There's that sense of dread. That's very important to these games.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's why, they mention the setting, because they want you to feel that dread due to the loneliness and isolation. This, just only increases the tension because I don't know, in some action games when you're like running through the world, it's just the first thing I thought of with Spider-Man 2, the latest one, you are a superhero and you're saving everybody, but there's like sometimes it'll occur in the game where like someone will come and the other Spider-Man will come and like take care of something along with you. So you kind of have someone, not that you need rescuing, but someone there as a pal to like help you out. Or obviously in this game, in a horror game, you get none of that. You almost never get some sort of partner. You almost never get some sort of or anything in a horror game because they want you to feel alone. So now let's move on to the gameplay. The gameplay of a horror game, the loop needs to be something that teaches the player to explore the world, that it also encourages the player to explore and go out and continuously push forward. And oftentimes following the first path that's available to you will unlock some sort of mechanic that allows you then to go back and explore other areas earlier in the game that were previously locked. The article didn't mention this part, but I was just I could kind of see how this is important. It was weird. I felt like the article actually didn't talk too much about why this gameplay thing was important. So I was like, okay, and I need to deduce that on my own.
Okay, yeah. Put that psych degree to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I said, I had to deduce why they included this in there. And I thought how teaching the player to be accustomed to the world and environment can then be further used to scare the player. Because if the player has already explored an area, beaten the enemies, and you see their dead bodies and stuff there, then you kind of let your guard down.
Yeah.
And you don't think that there's going to be something else that's happened there because you already went through there and you're like, oh, there was already this monster that was here that jumped out somewhere, or and I took care of him already. So I should be safe if I go through here again. And horror games will use that to their advantage and still place different quote unquote events that will happen there.
They're subverting your expectations.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. You cannot let the player be able to predict what's going to happen next. Now for Deadspace and how they identify with the gameplay, I feel like this does a pretty good job. I feel like usually they have you going through one area. I know at some point it does open up and you can explore, but for the most part, even when you explore into these and retrace your steps, I never felt safe. I was still just something can pop out at any moment. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm scared.
The developers are really mean. They can mess with you at a save point, right?
Oh,
usually save points are safe.
Yeah.
Right? But if they're feeling a little spicy, they'll mess with you there.
That's a good point, because I feel like Dead Space, their save points didn't feel very safe also. They were often just feet away or corners away from other enemies. That's another brilliant level design thing of theirs. That's so cool. So, and speaking of level design, that's the next factor on this article. Level design in horror games often has short, narrow spaces, got to make the player feel confined and have nowhere to hide or run to when they're faced with the enemy. So they got to make them face the enemy. This also is a part of pacing, as we talked about earlier, but I feel like Dead Space Remake does this pretty often with the sharp corners, hallways. They do connect to the bigger areas, but then those areas are kind of sectioned off through different debris and stuff, and have certain paths created through. Yeah, they have these paths created through this debris, so they force you down a certain way or force you through around a certain corner, and they could place enemies certain areas so that you don't feel that you might see them, but you are trying to avoid them, and it just increases the fear factor there by trying to run away. And speaking of enemy, the enemy AI was the next part of this article. In horror games, the AI needs to find a balance between putting pressure on the player and killing the player or causing a game over. Since a game over often brings a sense of relief, because it's kind of the worst thing that could happen to you in the game. Right. It's oh, I just die. So they don't want that. The AI needs to be sure not to instantly kill the player. They want you to just keep on feeling pressured by the enemy. So we do see this a lot in Dead Space Remake, because I think in the article it talked about, it just compared this game to Doom. The original Doom, not because it's a horror game, but just it was just an example. And they talked about how the enemies there, they look scary, quote unquote, and they will stop what they're doing to just shoot you and just try to kill you, because their objective, the enemy AI in that game and other games, is just to kill you. Whereas this one, Dead Space Remake, they're slowly, consistently making their way at you at any cost. You shoot off their limb, they're going to crawl towards you. And once they get to you, they don't even, some of them might instantly kill you depending on which version of the necromorph you're fighting. But they'll just like damage you, and then the character animation, you kind of like step away, so you have a chance just to like keep on running and run away from them still. But if you turn around, if you don't deal with them, they're still gonna attack you. So constantly putting on that pressure creates this fear factor for the enemy. I mean, for the player, not the enemy.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. And there's times where the enemies do capture you, and you are to like a quick time event, right? To kind of fight them off.
Yeah, it really is just like activates your fight or flight mode in there of like, shit, I just got to press this button really quick, or I got to do these inputs real quick just to like try and get away from him. And then it causes a sense of panic that even further plays into the game. And I really like that. The next part is jump scares. So this one was interesting because I don't know, whenever I think of like a horror game, jump scare is kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But turns out you don't really want to use a lot of them. You know, if you overuse them, then it's just going to become predictable. You're going to constantly think about being jump scared. So it's best to utilize these during a scripted event. I don't feel like Dead Space Remake uses a lot of jump scares, and I think when it does, it's in a certain state that you're already like feeling a little stressed out. So it's like an ideal environment for a jump scare, but once again, they don't do them too often, so it doesn't feel predictable when it happens. I feel like out of most horror stuff, the jump scares always get me. Like I don't physically move, but I feel that like heart rate spike, that adrenaline spike, and that makes me feel terrible. And I hate that. I'm always trying to avoid that. The last thing in this horror game article is the visual and audio aspects of the game. So they found that visuals aren't quite as important in horror games compared to other games because there's a bunch of different art styles that could occur. Oh, yeah. There's different ways to draw.
There's so many indie horror games out there.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That might even be like the classic like Super NES style graphics. It can still come across as creepy. So they did find though that compared to visual, audio plays a bit more of an important part. And Dead Space Remake does a great job with the audio design. Oh my god, I can't believe you haven't played the remake because it feels like the original audio is probably pretty good too. Like I'm sure they spent a lot of time designing that. But yeah, so with an audio, a game should never be completely silent. You always want to hear some sort of background audio, such as like the humming of machines, which occurs a lot in Dead Space, or I'm thinking of like Resident Evil 7, just some sort of like swamp or bog background noise, like crickets and stuff like that. I don't know, birds, creepy things. So yeah, you don't want to keep it quiet for the player. Always got to have some sort of like eerie noise occurring. Yeah, like we already said, Dead Space Remake did a great job with this. I feel like every audio thing that they had that was like designed, or every aspect of the audio was just designed so well and was so satisfying and really upped the fear factor of the game. I felt like even just walking down the hallway, doing the stomps, the ambient noise of the space station, it all works so well. And it was never silent. Every area seemed to have its own sort of like background noise that was occurring. And man, some of the background noises, like I could still hear in my head. And I played this game like over a year ago at this point. So
it stuck with you.
Yeah. I remember the humming of one machine in particular, because once again, I thought we were in like there was a save point, but we weren't safe. And I remember just hearing the humming of the machine, seeing that save point, was so excited that I felt relief that I was finally like about to save and probably heal up and stuff. And then out of nowhere, there was like a bigger necromorph there that was kind of guarding the save point. So just to quickly recap like those 7 factors for developing a horror game, we got pacing, setting, gameplay, level design, enemy AI, jump scares, visual and audio. And overall, I think Dead Space Remake does a damn good job at every one of these, and makes for a great game. So yeah, in addition to the game development side, I wanted to, do the psych research side. So I found a couple of articles that, might not necessarily just about horror video games. Some of them are about like other horror media. Some of them are not even about video games at all. So let me just share some of these articles here. I'm sorry if I butcher the name of any of these authors, but one article, Klassen et al. One article, Klassen et al. In 2020, found how the type of horror sought out is dependent on what the individual believes is plausible and can actually occur. So, for example, if someone strongly believes in like paranormal or conspiracy theories, they are more likely to seek out horror that resembles those sorts of like paranormal situations of like ghosts, aliens, monsters, and stuff like that. Whereas like, it's funny because I think for me, I'm not too into paranormal and conspiracy theory stuff. So I do find like a lot of these ghosts and alien like type of horror things that never really bothered me.
I see.
But the ones that do really mess with me, or more realistic ones of just like some sort of like murder type thing, a scary person with a mask and like a desire to harm people is what terrifies me. So I don't know if that's saying what that's saying about me. This might not be necessarily true for video games, since almost every video game has some sort of supernatural setting. So this doesn't necessarily apply, but I still found it.
So you're saying Resident Evil 7 isn't real?
Yeah. I mean,
there's not a house down in Louisiana?
It can be if you're Isaac Clarke. I don't know. And shit, I hope Resident Evil ain't real. Another article I found that was pretty interesting. It was written by Tinwell et al. 2010. Here they sought to identify like the most frightening combination of sounds and facial movement. Yeah. And here they found that the most scary combination for facial rendering is if the voice of this virtual monster is more human-like. The more like a person, less like, I don't know, weird animal-like, was the more terrifying for the person. And that also coincides with less synchronization between the voice and the movement of the face. So when it looks like the monster's maybe like mouth is moving, but in a weird way that shouldn't be saying these words or saying like making these noises, that created a more fearful experience.
Okay, I see.
I'm like, I wonder if this article, they dove into any sort of, or if they tested it with any monster that didn't move its mouth at all. Curious to see, but and this doesn't really apply to Deadspace Remake because we don't see a lot of these enemies talk.
No, they just make like grunts and gurgles and noises like that, yelling.
The yelling can be scary though. Yeah, I guess with the yelling, they did design the voices in a way that do sound like mutilated humans, which is pretty much what they are. So that was pretty solid on their part, with the enemy audio design there. And this is the name I was terrified I'm going to butcher. Vachira Temporn et al. 2013 found that players who are already in a stressed and suspenseful state experience greater fear and scares than players who are just in a neutral state.
Okay.
So this is why jump scares aren't quite as terrifying as like running away from an enemy in like Dead Space Remake. And, this kind of aligns with their design philosophy throughout Dead Space. The whole game really has you in this suspenseful state because you're like looking at every corner, looking ahead of where you're running to see if something is there. Or at least for me, it was always to see if there's a potential for something to jump out. And there never really was. I mean, once in a while there was, but they would like telegraph that. So they didn't want you to feel like the jump scare. I remember during some like hallways, seeing the necromorph like run just like in the walls or like past the wiring or something, past like this metal grate, but it doesn't immediately jump out at you. So you like see it run ahead of you, and then I would tense up because it's like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to fight this thing. When's it gonna pop out?
Right.
And that creates this suspenseful state. And then once it does finally come out, then it's just like full on panic mode of just firing or trying to conserve your ammo and run away. Yeah.
You can always punch them.
Yeah, you could, but that never worked out for me.
Where's my melee only Dead Space run?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did you do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No way.
How did you even fight the final boss if that were the case?
Right.
Oh, man.
only when required, right? Melee
Yeah,
only when required.
only when required. Almost done with the articles here. The last article I have was by Heng et al. In 2020. This one, less of a horror game thing, but discussed how players' self-concepts can be affected by the avatars in the video games. And this is what I said earlier, the player avatar identification and self-concept. It talked about how the players, because they've already invested like a lot of time in the characters and you play as the character, you start feeling this empathy towards the character. And if you're empathic towards this character that you're playing as, and if you identify as them, then you are going to feel the emotions that they're feeling. And you're going to imagine yourself in those situations. And I think I love when a game is able to make me feel that. I always look for, really appreciate games that will like bring me to tears or like have me audibly laughing because of something funny that happened, or feel satisfied or scared. And like, just if a game is able to make me feel an emotion, I don't know, I feel like that was a good game. But the way to do that is by designing the game to have you identify with the player and with the character. And like I said earlier, that that could be anything from like character customization or even like dialogue options where you can like choose what your character wants to say, and that way you could like you put some of yourself into what the character is saying. Yeah, all those aspects will combine to make you feel like the character. Overall, there were a lot of articles actually that I didn't talk about here. I didn't write down, that detailed the use of player avatar identification in either predicting or improving different factors in people's lives, or to examine some sort of social disorder that might be present in the real world but is absent in the virtual world. So pretty much saying they were using video games to help people with their like psychological diagnoses and stuff like that. I love that they're using that video games have been useful in this manner, especially as somebody who's like passionate about mental health and gaming, to know that we can use the gaming to help people. Happy that there's a lot of research happening here. I'm sorry I didn't really put too much of that in here, but just know that it's occurring throughout the world right now, and it's seeming like a viable treatment option. To kind of reel this back into Deadspace, overall, the game like combines so many different psychological factors that we've already discussed, and they do this masterfully to scare the player and make you kind of identify with the avatar. In this case, Isaac Clarke, as he traverses through this traumatic environment. And I think because of that, it makes Deadspace Remake one of the best horror games I've played. I don't know, what you thinking? Lay it on me.
I need to play that remake.
Yeah.
I needed to hit $20, honestly.
Man, had you told me, we have so many games to play, but I would have definitely just bought it for you. You know what? It is, it's $20. I literally saw a Wario 64, shouts out to Wario 64, the best Twitter account for deals on games. He tweeted earlier about that game, I think, being on sale. Might have been Amazon for like $20 right now.
Okay. Because it was only on PS5, right? And Xbox, right?
Yeah. So it's
not on.
It's cheap. It's cheap now. I guess now's the time to dive into what we've been talking about, or what we've been enjoying, what other media we've been enjoying right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think drink some water first before we get to that, because I got a lot to say. Yeah. So, any final thoughts on Deadspace before we move on, though?
It's a damn good game. I really hope they do remakes for 2 and 3.
Yeah. I know 3 not a lot of people like. I know I hear some bad things about 3.
Well, I hope they remake 3 and make it better.
Oh yeah. I hope so too. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, that's a good idea.
But yeah, no. Go ahead and tell me what else that we've both been playing.
So we both have been playing Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth.
Yeah,
right.
Man.
What is it? We're in February, mid-February, right? This game came out. What, the 26th of January?
Yeah.
I'm already like 60 hours in.
Yeah, I'm 42.
I'm just like, where did all that time go? We need to talk about Dondoko Island as well.
Oh, man.
Because that's a whole other game.
God, the fact that they threw this whole other pretty good life sim game into their... No, not life sim. What is it called? Island management game into this already amazing Japanese RPG. God damn it. How do they do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think even in our text, right, I think I was calling it Dondoko Island. It wasn't even calling it Infinite Wealth anymore.
No,
for like a week, right?
I'm playing Dondoko Island right
now. This is what I'm playing. Right? So what that is essentially they give you an island, right? You arrive, You know, it's all dirty and trashy, right? You got to fix it, make it a 5-star resort, kind of like Animal Crossing, right? I think your main objective is to get to a 5-star island.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what you're doing. You're catching bugs, you're catching fish, right? You're putting up sleazy hotels to get your popularity up, right?
Yeah.
Make more money, and you put it back into the island, you get that 5-star island. And so the whole purpose of this is to make some money, some real money that you can use in the game, because those weapons are expensive.
Yeah.
Items are expensive in Infinite Wealth.
And up to that point, there wasn't. Well, now we know that the dungeons are the best way to make money in that game, but we didn't know that before. So we thought that this was like the best way to make money.
I haven't been back after I discovered the dungeons.
Yeah. I put in like 15 hours just into Dondoko Island. So
I think I put like 20 in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have any reason to be back, but damn, was it fun?
It was fun.
Oh my God.
What a time vampire, right?
Yeah.
I really just took over for like a week.
Did you get your rating, both ratings to like the S rank?
I believe so, yeah.
Damn. I didn't get the satisfaction to S rank, but I got popularity up there. I stopped it, but my goal was to get the S rank hotels for everything. I think I did 3, and then I also wanted an S rank character I wanted to at least be able to fill a whole hotel with S rank characters. Yeah. But I don't think I got to.
No, I didn't get that. You can go back to the mainland, right, in Hawaii, and you can grab people from the sub stories that you've completed and send them back to Dondoko Island. You get more. I was gonna call them clients. You get more clientele that way, right?
Yeah.
So Infinite Wealth, I mean, amazing. I think. What chapter are you on now?
Yeah, I'm in chapter 8.
Okay, same.
I might be towards the end of it. Have you gotten? Where are you in chapter 8?
So right now we went back to survive the bar.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at. I'm doing a lot of drink links because I'm like best friends with everyone now because we're just fighting. I'm looking for Kiryu's memories all over the place.
Yeah.
So because this character I've been with since like the end of grad school.
That's
so
crazy.
I started with Yakuza 0, played them all. I haven't played the spin-offs like Judgment or Lost Judgment, but I hear very good things about them. So for me, I want to see this through with Kiryu, see his memories, because he's dealing with cancer.
Yeah.
And that's rough, especially for a character. People are saying this is the video game character, who cares?
No.
But no, the way that they like the stories portrayed, how his struggles portrayed, how the characters care about him and his well-being, right? It hits close to home. It really does.
We talked about the empathy earlier in the game of like empathizing with the characters you play as, and I feel like this game does an amazing job at making you feel empathy towards every character, Kiryu included. Kiryu particular because of his situation with the cancer and like constantly, I don't know, he's known as the Dragon of Dojima, so he was like one of the best, most iconic like Yakuza members that other Yakuza looked up to, and now to see him go from the peak to this, he's not frail, but he will admit that he's like aging and slowing down, and even if it weren't the cancer, he would be like not the same as he used to be. So it certainly is taking an interesting perspective, seeing like the hero from other games now on the decline towards the end of their life. And I really want to do an episode on this game.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's so many characters, right?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, right? This is a serious story, serious things are going on, but I love how they just have some silly moments as well, right? Like we were talking about the karaoke, right? Kiryu singing, right?
Batting cages.
Yeah, the batting cages. There's a point where like, the group is talking in the bar, right? And they're not really listening to Kiryu sing, and he kind of gets a little pouty about it, right? So I guess like, you guys weren't listening.
I've been there, Kiryu. I feel you.
I was like, oh shoot!
Everybody encourages you to do the karaoke song, but then nobody cares. No one listens. You're like, oh, okay.
I was like, oh, okay, right? He's a serious dude. He kicks a lot of ass, right?
Yeah.
But he's still human, right? He still has,
He's making his bucket list right now and trying to go through it.
Yeah.
And it's wild because he's never given himself a lot of care, is what the message we're getting towards, at least right now in the game. And it's cool to see him start to focus on himself and have some fun, since he doesn't have too much time left.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really wonder how that game's going to end, right?
One thing I feel like I am so confused by is the introduction of like this sort of like magical element with Bryce, the leader of the Calipena?
Shoot.
Palakena?
Palakena.
Palakena.
Right?
Okay, yeah. The leader of the Palakena. They're not
It's a religious group.
Yeah, it's a
right?
religious group that was doing good in Hawaii, but turns out that they are actually kind of like a front for a lot of different gangs and yakuza.
Sounds like they control the underworld of Hawaii.
Yeah,
I think that's what's going on, right?
but their leader comes in and like kind of very religious, like of just like some magical figure comes in, steps in front of a gun and says, if you fire this, like it's only going to end badly for you. And the person fires the gun and it backfires on the gun holder and probably kills him. I don't know. We don't see that.
I think he comes
anymore.
back. No, because I think his eyes messed up, right?
Yeah, his eyes.
But then you get that image of Bryce just standing in front of the eagle wings or the angel wings. You remember that? And I was like, oh, okay.
And then we later get him. Yeah, I think you've seen it at this point. Yeah, because then we later get him like staying in front of the fire as well after we find out that he's in front of everything, and it's like, oh, okay, you the devil. Yeah,
that fight was. Oh, you don't fight him, right? You fight his like minions, and like the gangs, right? I just powered through that fight because I was level 40. Because I went to the dungeon and I was like, you can make money? Yeah. All right, let's go. So I spent like 3 to 4 hours, on this dungeon. Damn, man. Right? Of course, I got to break it up by going to the gym because I'm like, I need to do something else. It's like grinding in the dungeon, right?
I get you.
But like level 40, job rank 30. So I'm just like whooping dudes left and right. And then chapter 8 hits and it's like, here's your new party. And I'm like, oh. There goes my hard work.
I know.
I was so disheartened. I was like, oh no.
I low-key had that spoiled for me that chapter 8 goes back to Kiryu in Japan. So I was just like, I don't want to put too much time into this right now because I know some shit's about to happen.
But no worries. My party, Kiryu's level 40 now.
Oh,
he's almost job rank 30. I don't know how. I'm just fighting things, just fighting people, just playing the game. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, chapter 8, I think there's 14 chapters in total.
Oh, there are?
Yeah, okay, I looked it up just in case. I always look it up for these games.
Yeah, it's good to know because good to know we're a little over halfway, in 40 hours in.
This is going to take another month to beat.
I know. Sure. And we only have 10 days looking at that date.
And I still need to play Reload too. I'm going to have to balance Reload in Final Fantasy.
Oh, P3?
Yeah, P3.
Persona 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot. I don't have that time right now.
I was just like, okay. And then I'm still playing Tekken, of course.
Yeah.
Right. On the weekends with my family, with my cousin and brother. So
that's always fun.
That's always, a good time. I'm still playing King, so they're all mad at me because I'm just grabbing them. Right? They're like, I can't break throws. Yeah. And it's funny because you go on the subreddit for Tekken and you just see people like just venting, like King players are idiots. I hate them. I can't break the throws. Yeah. And to be honest, if I was playing against the King, I probably don't know how to break throws. I'd feel the same way. But it's just so fun, right? But going back to Infinite Wealth, there's so much in this game that's just really well done, right? And I think you went to the dub, right? You switched to the dub recently?
Yeah, I switched to the English dub. I felt like I've been trying to like learn Japanese again because I took 4 years of it in high school, but then I was like, dang. Yeah, and then trying to plan for like a Japan trip. So I'm like, oh, I got to refresh my memory here. Let me put it on the Japanese dub. But then there were too many times where if I looked away for a bit, or I would just miss a shit ton of context and dialogue. So I'm like, I can't keep on doing this.
Yeah, that's what got me to get into the dub. In 7, I played the dub. I really liked it. This dub, I was like, oh, I don't know, because I like Kiryu's Japanese VA, right?
Yeah,
he's an amazing VA.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? Let's just go English because this game's probably 100 hours plus. And you're right. Like, what if I'm looking at my phone while something's happening and they're speaking in Japanese? I have no idea what's going on. I'm gonna lose that context, right? Because with English, you can just hear it. We can look away and still hear it. Kind of know what's going on, right?
Yeah, I know.
Dang, their voices. Ichiban in English is amazing. Like his cheerfulness. He's so endearing.
That's a really good
He's the
actor.
opposite of Kiryu. Like,
Yeah, super stoic, serious. Oh. Yeah, Eric Tomizawa's voice took. Wait, because did you play the sub at all?
I played the sub when the demo came out.
Okay,
there was a demo.
Was Tomizawa in there?
Yeah, he was playable.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's because I started off with the sub.
Yeah, that's gonna be weird to adjust for sure.
His voice was the most jarring.
So what does it sound? It's like, because I don't remember too well.
I felt like with his Japanese dub, the sub. He came across as a bit more sly and confident.
Okay. Yeah, that's not English Tomizawa.
English tone is just like kind of goofy
awkward.
And awkward. Yeah, weird, mousy. I think it works for him and his character a lot right now. Like I do appreciate it now, but to go from those different tones, I was just for about an hour, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I got to change this back to the sub. I can't take Eric's voice or Tomizawa's voice. But I'm glad I stuck through it.
Did you hear about Bryce in the sub, in the Japanese sub or dub?
I mean, I've heard both, but I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Because there's a scene, I think, when he shows up in the Japanese sub, dub, whatever. He's got like English voice or something. Like,
really?
Yeah, like he's speaking in English, but it's very broken and it sounds silly. I heard that was a complaint for the when he shows up. Because in the English dub, right, it's fine.
It's just
Bryce.
English.
Yeah, it's just English. Yeah. So I'm wondering what that sounds like. I need to go check that out.
I do remember him coming in and then speaking English, even though I was on the Japanese, I was on the sub, but I don't remember how broken it was or what that sounded like.
Yeah, because I heard some people were not upset, but were kind of like taken aback, like, you know, well, that's weird because he's in Hawaii, you know, his English shouldn't be broken. Yeah. But I mean, whatever.
That's kind of how it is with like Kiryu as well. Or not Kiryu, the whole main crew, like a lot of them don't speak English. So to see them conversing with these native English speakers, because we're on the English language, or like because we're on the English thing, and even the inverse of like when I was on the sub and seeing like these native Hawaiian people speaking perfect Japanese. Yeah. I was like, okay, this is a little weird, but I get it.
It's weird. It's like in Tekken, like everyone can understand each other, but like this dude's speaking Spanish, the other one's speaking French, and the other one's speaking Japanese.
There's definitely a language barrier.
But they understand them, you know, like complete. The bear is speaking too.
Yeah, Kuma.
So it's like, yeah, all right, it's a video game, right? Anything else for Infinite Wealth?
No, I'm going to keep on playing this game. I'm going to try and get through it. I feel like I might try to mainline the story between now and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's release. But yeah, I'm just loving it so far. I'm so glad that I don't think I had that game on my radar until like you told me about it, and then seeing the positive reactions online. So I'm so glad I decided to give this game a chance.
Yeah, it's a really good game. Hey, there we go. Oh, this is what I was going to say. So in 7, because we were talking about the language stuff, right? Yeah. I was playing the dub, and there's a sub quest where it's an English tourist. And he's talking to Ichiban, right? But I was playing on the dub, right? And Ichiban says, "Oh shit, it's English," but he's like speaking English, right? Yeah. But he looks at the camera in a certain way, like, I speak Japanese, right? Yeah. And so the English is funny. It works, like, or it doesn't work because one of the characters comes up and tries to help the English guy, and he's just yelling like "Go your way, that way, that," like broken English, right? But it's like you're playing the dub, and it's so funny and it's so weird, right? That just reminded me of that. I was just like, yeah, it's hilarious.
It's silly the way they don't need to justify who speaks what and who understands what, because it doesn't really matter too much for the story. As a matter of fact, it would probably be cumbersome on the story to write around that. So I'm glad they did it the way they did it, but it feels a little funny just to see it in execution.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, this is really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. I think, this might be a hot take, and it also could be recency bias. It might surpass Persona 5 Royal for my favorite RPG.
Really?
JRPG right now.
I'm already feeling this is game of the year for me.
Oh yeah. This is definitely up there for me. I don't know if it for sure.
I think this is number one for me.
Yeah.
I think this is
I could see it.
We've peaked. I think. Yeah. I don't think anything's coming close to this.
I could definitely see that. I would make an argument for it as well, to be honest. So far, I mean, we're only in February, but I don't think I've played anything else that has gripped me quite as hard as this game has. I played a few indie games earlier this year. Oh, man. Yeah, other than Infinite Wealth, I know you said Tekken 8. I've, as you know, just got a new gaming desktop PC, so I've been trying to play whatever I can just to push the graphics to the limit. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of graphically challenging games. So, I mean, you saw me earlier. I booted up Helldivers 2, another game I wanted to talk about. I've been enjoying because it has a great gameplay loop. Remnant 2 is another one. Debating buying Cyberpunk just to, man, I already played it, but I kind of just want to see what it looks like. Yeah. So that's just been like what I've been up to. But one demo that I played that I really liked, and I felt like I was telling you about this game in general, is Tales of Kinzera Zhao. And it's kind of a mouthful of a title, but it is a platformer Metroidvania / search action game, which I found out search action is what apparently is what they call Metroidvania games in Japan. Search action.
I did not know
games.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't know that either until the pod I listened to called The Besties talked about it. So I was just like, oh wait, that kind of makes a lot of sense. And I kind of like that term a bit more in terms of describing what you do in the game, search action. Yeah, so this game was actually made by an actor from a show that I like. His name is Abubakar Salim, and he was an actor on probably many things, but what I most know him most from is HBO's Raised by Wolves, which was like a sci-fi show. He played one of two parent android robots that were trying to raise these children who were supposed to be like the last of humanity. And that show was also pretty heavily religious influence, where there was like two competing religions, and one of them, like they were the last of the dying religion, so they were programmed to like raise these kids.
Okay. Was it a Church of Unitology?
It low key felt like it, but the show got canceled. So after season 2, I believe. So unfortunately, won't see what happens there. That's okay, because I think that gave him a chance to make this game, which was a pretty good Metroidvania. It's funny because it feels like Prince of Persia came out recently. That was another like talked about Metroidvania that everybody has loved. So maybe Metroidvania's search action games are just like in the zeitgeist right now. But this one was also pretty good. I think what it did a bit differently that I really enjoyed, it was just the demo, so I only played for like an hour.
So the full game's not out yet?
No, it comes out in April, I want to say, maybe May.
Okay.
It'll be coming out soon. I would like to buy it. I would like to play it, but I would love to like support him by purchasing this game. So I'll definitely like be playing it or be buying it.
Game development is not easy.
No, it's also only like $18 right now.
Okay.
So it's not
not the
pricey.
$70.
It's not no $70 Dragon's Dogma 2.
Oh my gosh. I have to put that one on hold. I'm so sad. I don't have enough time for Dragon's Dogma 2. Not right now.
We'll see when that game releases, but I feel the same way. But yeah, what I was going to say about Tales of Kinzera was one thing they do that was pretty cool was they give you these two different masks that give you different powers and different like moves. And they feel gameplay wise, they do feel different enough. Like it feels like pretty differentiated. Like you'll wear the moon mask. I forgot the actual term of it, but it's like one's sun and one's moon. The sun mask will have you like do a bunch of like fast light attacks. You could be a bit more fluid, I guess, a bit more jumpy if you need to and react a bit quicker. Whereas the moon is a bit more heavy, powerful attacks.
Okay. Yeah.
They each have like their own respective ranged damage ranged thing as well. Or actually, I don't know if the sun mask has a ranged, but yeah, I don't know. There's just like an interesting dynamic there. Really enjoyed it. They seem to have like these interesting traversal powers. One of them you could only use with the moon mask, and it would allow you to freeze liquid. Freeze like because at one point you fall down a bridge and then go down this like waterfall and have to go through the river, but at the end of that section you get this ability to freeze the water, so then you could freeze it and like make your way back up the waterfall. That's cool. And then progress. And I'm like, oh shit, that's actually really well thought out and beautiful game design, like and it just looks great too, like color palette wise, like everything looks good. Wanted to talk about that and just like shout that out real quick. The other game that I've been playing a little bit is Helldivers 2. I only jumped in for like an hour or so, and I was only able to play by myself because I wasn't able to get a match. Like I think because I was only like level 1 and playing on the easiest rank because I just started off. There probably weren't a lot of people matchmaking there. So I waited for a few minutes and never got a match. So I was like, you know what, let me just do it on my own. And it's a pretty fun game. You've seen clips of it.
I've seen reviews, clips of it. It looks really fun. I was a fan of the first one.
I
think it was on Vita as well, and PS3, PS4.
It was old.
Yeah.
I was surprised by like how old that game is. Wait, those Helldivers, was it it wasn't like a third person.
No, it was
shooter,
like top
right?
down.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So you'd have the character, you control them, right? And you would see the enemies top down. So it changes perspective in two, right? Because it's third person, right? Which you could say makes it a little bit tougher because now you can't see the area from the top.
Yeah. I don't know if I have messed up the settings or not messed up the settings, but like I don't know if this is game design or if I'm missing something, but I don't think you could have the mini map up and run as well. I think you have to press a button to bring up the mini map, but as soon as you start, you could walk, but if you hit the sprint, then it disappears. Not too sure if there's a way to leave it up, because I would ideally like to just have that mini map there because it is pretty useful. It shows you where the enemies are and stuff and objectives. But other than that, the game just feels great to play. The shooting feels satisfying. It's not, you feel a bit more conscientious about shooting because when you reload, you throw away the rest of the clip. And you have only like 7 clips in total that you could carry, and you could find more ammo, but it certainly made me feel a bit more reserved when I'm firing. Really appreciate it. But yeah, I cannot wait to play this with like other people. I've been trying to convince some friends to get it, but so far nobody else has. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah, were you playing anything else other than Tekken 8?
Other than Tekken 8, Infinite Wealth. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to hear about my weekly Marvel Snap escapade. that's just something I play at the gym on the elliptical or something. I'm like, all right, let me get some Marvel Snap matches in. Let's see.
Do you watch a lot of stuff too?
No, I actually don't watch much.
Okay.
I'm more just spend my time gaming. Yeah. Reading One Piece, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh man, we didn't even talk about the latest chapter. Okay. Well, and we talk about it.
Yeah, I'm caught up. So
yeah. This is a video game. I can't spoil One Piece for people here. We'll talk about it later.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I was asking about the TV shows because I just started Legion. I don't know. Are you familiar with that show at all, or have you heard of it?
Is it?
It was an older show. Came out, aired 7 years ago.
Okay. Is this like a Marvel thing?
Yeah. Okay.
Oddly enough, Legion sounds familiar. Because Marvel Snap has like a bunch of heroes I've never seen, but now I know who they are.
Legion is.
So I was like, okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
I'm not so sure if Legion is a person yet or is a group of people. It's certainly the show is like kind of done before any of the MCU shows really started coming out. Mm-hmm. Definitely was before WandaVision, which is the first one I can remember right now. I think there were some MCU shows before that as well. But
is this older than Daredevil? Netflix's Daredevil?
I don't think so. I don't think it is. But this wasn't even done by like Disney, Marvel.
Gotcha. Okay.
This was done by FX. And I think because of that, it made a very good show. It is... Oh man, I hate to say this. It kind of blows anything the MCU has done out of the water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It feels like the creators had a vision and didn't have to like play by the Disney's rules. So it is wild because like you go through or you follow like this one guy. His name's David. He's been told his whole life he suffers from like paranoid schizophrenia and he sees delusions and hallucinations and stuff like that. Turns out he is just like a super powerful telekinetic and he's hearing a bunch of like actual voices in people's thoughts and stuff. And that's what he thought was like, the voices in his head. And then we find him as he's like breaking out of a mental health hospital.
Oh, okay.
But visually, everything just looks so colorful. I don't know. There's like, I don't know how to describe it. But then the dialogue is great as well. The acting is like phenomenal. By the main character who is portraying somebody with paranoid schizophrenia who has been told they've been sick their whole life and is now trying to come to terms with the fact that they're just normal. Yeah, I don't know. I really like that show. Okay. Huh. Okay. Well, we're coming close to 2 hours. I thought this was going to be a 1 hour one because of
just one character.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Goes to show how much we could ramble.
Oh yeah, I could honestly, if we could do a whole podcast on Infinite Wealth. Honestly,
at this rate,
each chapter, right? A podcast on each chapter. But Jesus. Yeah,
thank you all for listening. This has been fun. I hope you learned a lot about Isaac Clarke and Deadspace Remake, and I think we'll talk more about what the next episode will be off air. But we hope to stick around. And I don't know, any other parting words?
No, I mean, if you've been listening this long, thank you. You know, if you dropped us a little bit earlier and you came back to it, thank you, you know, for listening. It's been fun. It's been a good time.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.